Welcome to this week's edition of the Community Talk Show. Today, our topic is Teachers' Perspective on Reopening of Schools in January 2022 in Uganda. Today, I have a panel of 4, and everybody on this panel is a teacher. Now, the Community Talk Show airs every Monday from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. on Civic Space TV, and it is brought to you by Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV. I'm your moderator for today. My name is Lakeje Ndapansi. I'm an advocate, I'm a tax consultant, I'm also a lecturer. Today I have a panel of 4. I'm going to let my panelists introduce themselves. I will start right away from Mr. Rukundo Moses. Mr. Rukundo Moses, you're welcome to introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Fancy, for the opportunity. I'm happy and glad to be here, quite excited to share my views with other panelists. Moses Rukundo is my name, head teacher at St. Agnes Junior School in Gisugu, near International Hospital, Kampala. Thank you, happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moses. We are happy to have you on this platform. Our second panelist from today is Goreti Biomire. I'm going to let her introduce herself.
Good morning once again. Good morning, everyone. I'm called Goreti Biomire. I'm a lecturer at Makerere University Business School and in the Faculty of IT and Computing. And I am also the director for the Disability Resource and Learning Center. I work with children and persons with disabilities. I'm quite very happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Goreti. We are happy to have you at the Community Talk Show today. Our third panelist is Mr. Fred Ongom. I will also let Mr. Fred introduce himself.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity to share ideas as educationists. My name is Fred Ongom. I teach at International School, Kampala Community International School. It's based in Naguru, Kampala. And I think it would be interesting to listen to all different sides of the story of the pandemic coming from the classrooms. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Fred. We are happy to have you. And my kind request is that if you are alone in your room, if you could kindly take off the mask so that we are able to understand you and also see you clearly. Our fourth panelist for Thank you. Our fourth panelist for today is Mr. Peter Okware. He's the CEO and founder, Teachers in Need, that is TIN, and he's also a head teacher. I think Peter will be joining us in a bit. So we will start the discussion. When he joins us, we will let him introduce himself. So like I stated earlier, our topic for today is Teachers' Perspective on Reopening of Schools in January 2022 in Uganda. So to introduce this topic, in March 2020, that was last year, all schools and education facilities in Uganda were shut down by the government of Uganda due to the coronavirus pandemic. Now, according to UNESCO, this has been the longest shutdown of schools in the world. Now, we heard from the Minister of Education, Janet Museveni, who is also the First Lady of the country, who defended this policy and said that this was meant to keep the pupils and students from the threat that has been posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, schools opened for blended learning. Shortly after that, it was shut down again due to the emergence of the Delta virus. Now, we have heard from different critics who say that this lockdown has done more harm than good. And then we have people who defend the position and say this lockdown and shutdown of schools was necessary and has helped so much. We also watched an interview that was on Al Jazeera when the General Secretary of Uganda National Teachers Union, that is Philbert Baguma, was interviewed, and he argued that this shutdown has done more harm than good. We also saw a report from National Planning Authority, which stated that up to 30% of students are expected not to return to their school desk in January 2022 due to different reasons: teenage pregnancy, early marriage, child labor, among others. So that today we have a panel of teachers to discuss all these issues. What happened, how did we reach here? And also moving forward, schools are reopening according to government in January 2022. Is the government ready? Are the students ready? Are the teachers and the schools ready? So I will let my panel take on from there. I'll start right away from Teacher Moses. I'll start right with my first question to you. Give us a background to the closure of schools.
Thank you, Fancy, for the opportunity, background to the closure of schools. Indeed, when the coronavirus was declared as a pandemic globally, then every country definitely took it as a very serious issue. It did not spare any of the countries globally, and especially in the West, all those European countries. Of course, that led to a lot of fear, especially here in Africa, particularly Uganda, because I think in the wisdom of the leaders, they were like, if those developed countries could be really affected by this coronavirus in that way, and the people were dying extremely in big numbers, then what about when it reaches here and we have not taken any precautionary measures? I think it was against that background that the governments in the region, especially the whole of East Africa, and particularly our own country, Uganda, thought it wise that they better close the schools because that is where there is a big concentration of learners. That's where there are so many people that are gathered at the same time. Here we were talking about over 15 million people, all children, all learners, students, whichever category they belong to. So when you look at the university, the number of students in the universities, in the primary schools, in the nurseries, other tertiary institutions, over 15 million. And of course, that is the biggest percentage of the population of Uganda. So it was, I think, imperative that the schools or education institutions are closed such that they are able to mitigate the effects of the spreading of the virus from person to person. Obviously, it was a very wise decision for the government, I may say, because if children were infected, then indeed they could go ahead and affect the other children. I mean, affect the parents and especially the elderly who would eventually die. And then we end up again with orphans who cannot sustain themselves in schools. So I think it was important that the governments all over the world would first close so that we see where we are heading. And most especially, I think it was done in order not to overwhelm the weak, I must say, the weak health units and systems that we had at that time, because it just came, the health systems were not prepared to handle the big numbers. And so if we were to leave those concentrations, if we were to leave all those people, children, students in schools, and they end up infecting and affecting one another, then it would have been too much for the country and would have lost people in numbers. So I think that's what led to the closure of schools and other institutions of learning on the 20th of March last year. As of course, when I'm talking about Uganda in particular, I think that is the background of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Moses. Let me move to Goreti. Goreti, having had the background of what happened and what led to the shutdown of schools from Moses, my question to you is, from the perspective of a lecturer, do you think the shutdown of schools was justified?
Thank you very much, Fancy. Yes, I believe that the shutdown of the schools was justified, but however, we needed interventions to make sure that they still continue learning. They still continue learning for all learners. At that point, it was justified, but as students went home, we needed to have interventions in place that would ensure that the learners continue learning from where they are. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Goretti. I will move to Fred. And Fred, we will start right from where Goretti stopped. So when schools were shut down and then students and pupils went home, there was the introduction of online studies by some schools. I would like to get your take on the online studies.
Thank you very much, Fancy. I think I would begin from where Goretti pointed out that we needed interventions for continuity. Because as teachers, we know learning or teaching or education is a process. It's not a one-time thing. It doesn't stop. But now how it continues needed to have been strategized. To answer your question, a number of schools, including private schools and international schools where I work, continued providing online learning. I think the word is hybrid, not necessarily only online, because a number of places came up with what we call learning pods, where parents open their homes to their classes. So you just kind of do it like you're doing tutoring or coaching, but you're still able to cover your curriculum. And then the other thing is also what we noticed from those institutions is they put a lot of resources, like they were able to provide tablets, computer, internet access for their children. They were also able to help their children to get online and keep them focused, because as my fellow teachers will testify, a good percentage of teaching is class control, and now that went to the parents. That meant that whether on TV, on radio, on Zoom, or Google Meet, you still need someone to be able to help you as a teacher to ensure the learner is attentive and meeting the task or the learning goals that you've set. Now, where did we go wrong is the question. I think basing on what Moses gave as a background, I think there was a pandemic hysteria. Yes, we have a weak health system. Yes, well over everyone was panicking. Yes, we didn't know how it was gonna go. But as a country, we should have also gone into lockdown or closure of schools with a plan of reopening. But we didn't have that inside. We didn't even think about it. Like every single time ministry was asked, like, we'll communicate. The task force is meeting, the task force is meeting. And for the first time also, since history of health interventions in Uganda, schools were abandoned from consultations on education. We ended up having the district health task force distributing like learning materials and newspapers printing them without any proper following of, let's say, the curriculum or progress of the children. Neither is their assessment. So I know we could have done different things as schools, as individuals, as parents, as schools. But in the end, I feel that there's still just a lot other things that we will have to gather our heads around for the first 3-6 months when we get back to school. So yeah, Fancy, we did not have a plan to reopen. We did not plan on how long we are going to stay in lockdown, and we're not sure how to restart. We will restart. I am hoping that happens. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Fred. I can see we have Teacher Peter back with us. Teacher Peter, you'll start by introducing yourself. And then my question to you is to pick right from where Fred stopped. The government intervention during the shutdown of schools, do you think that was enough, or do you think more should have been done during the shutdown?
Thank you, thank you. Firstly, good morning to all of you. Sorry for that interruption or the hiccup from the network. Yes, I'm teacher Peter Okwari. I work with Teachers in Need and Teachers TV Africa plus Rising Star Preparatory School. I think I know most of these people on all the panelists, I think, yeah. Let me firstly thank you for that question. Let me at least share some light or shed some light on my opinion. Yes, I think the government is is it fine if you rephrase the question?
Yes, it's fine. My question to you is the government's intervention during the shutdown of schools. There were things like online studies, distributing newspapers, issues of radio. Do you think that government's intervention was enough, or do you think government should have done more than that?
Okay, firstly, thank you. I've got it clearly. I would say one is better than none. Firstly, we have to appreciate what the government did to see that at least the education was afloat during the lockdown. Though, as Ongoma said, Fred, like one of the challenges that we had, there was a very big uh, disconnection between the government and the schools, whereby they hijacked everything and they put education into the hands of people whom we didn't understand. Up to now, I don't know which people are given the opportunity to print the home learning material. It is very absurd that schools weren't engaged and they knew that schools were struggling. Why couldn't they basically start with that by saying that schools or associations that work with schools are given the responsibility to work on that, because there are so many in the nation that at least would have done that better and that would have enabled people to get the content within the shortest time possible. Then, if you go on the whole scenario, the entire scenario from the beginning to where we are right now, I believe, okay, the government, since it was an ambush, no one was prepared for the lockdown, neither the COVID and all that. I believe it's a learning process whereby the government has a lot to learn and a lot to prepare for ahead of time. But one of the things that we did wrong, totally wrong, was basically to look at the education, and then we went to a hold for 2 years, that is hibernation. And in that hibernation, we didn't look at formalities on how we are going to rethink and restructure our education, because that would be one of the reasons why we have spent all this time in the lockdown, at least apart from the hybrid, because the hybrid is going again, we are going to deal with the same content, but we are going to teach it in a different way. But at least it would have been the right time. It was an opportunity for the government to use this time to reshuffle or overhaul the education system by changing the curriculum from the performance-based to the solution-based, competence-based, and all that. Then I think it has also been a good litmus for the government to check on themselves on how our learning is conducted. People believe that learning should be done at school, but it has been a learning space whereby people should understand, the government and the teachers, that plus the parents, that learning shouldn't be conducted at schools alone, but also at home. But the challenge came in that parents had limited knowledge on how to assess the learners or support them, like the way how, again, all the panelists said. The biggest challenge here was that the government totally dominated everything. They didn't engage in the right stakeholders. Those are the parents, the teachers, the schools, even the learners themselves. They didn't get their views. I attended very few sessions whereby you could hear a government collecting views and opinions from the learners themselves. So I think, personally, if I'm to give marks, I would be rude if I give them below 50, but at least they couldn't go above 50. Like 55, yeah, but the 45 means a lot to all of us, simply because education always has to be above 80. Thank you for now.
Okay, thank you, Teacher Peter, for that. Moving to Moses. Moses, my question to you is, what has been the effect of shutdown of of the schools on the schools themselves?
Thank you, Fancy. Definitely the effects. By the way, the effects, in my perspective, have been both positive as well as negative, though the negative, of course, overwhelm the positive ones. First and foremost, we have, like you have already stated, the UNESCO report and all other organizations that have tried to carry out some statistics. A number of children are not likely to come back to school. You have already told us that 30%, I don't remember whether that was UNESCO report, but 30% of those learners are not likely to come to school. Very many children, especially the girls, are negatively affected because as we talk, we shall be having so many young mothers. If they are lucky to come back to school, definitely others have totally dropped out of the schools. So we are going to have children who are mothers in schools. We are going to have fathers that will be in the classrooms. At least the boys are a bit lucky. They may do it, and then they are able to go over it, and they are back to school. But definitely they will not be the same, because here you are talking about, you are dealing with a boy maybe an adolescent of senior 1, senior 4, around there, P6, P5 up country there, who are mothers, who are fathers, and that has negatively affected our young ones. That is on the negative bit of it. Still on the same note of the negative bit of it, with the schools themselves. First of all, teachers, especially in the private schools, it has been too much on them. Actually, others had to resort now to survival techniques by doing all sorts of odd things that have not only undermined their status, but have also sort of dehumanized the teaching profession. Because we have seen teachers laying bricks, we have seen teachers rubbing shoulders with other folks, the borders all over the place. We have seen teachers working as maids in the homes of the same children that they teach, and that has been really so bad. The schools themselves, as we talk, some of them are not likely to get back to their feet, because I'm sure that quite a number of schools have closed down. Others are not likely to reopen. Others are being taken over by the banks, and it is too much, especially on the private schools. However, all that said, the negative effects notwithstanding, I may also say that the closure of schools has probably brought one important thing, and that is the emergence of virtual learning, which used to be not only a privilege of the Western world, but also some of the schools that were largely international. But with the closure of schools, every school, at least some schools, not every school, some schools which were a bit capable and able, were able to turn themselves into virtual schools. And that has led to the really promotion of ICT technologies. People are now more computer literate than ever before. People are able to do things in the e-way, which is the way to go. We have seen some schools that adopted and adapted e-learning practices, those that were on Zoom, others that were on Google Meet, others that were on Google Meet with Classroom, others that were on Microsoft, trying to survive and catch up with time. And I am sure that had it not been probably for the closure of schools, maybe so many schools would keep on thinking that virtual learning is a privilege of the Western world, of the developed countries, or probably international countries in Uganda. But now we have seen even national schools being able to jump into e-learning, into virtual learning, and that has enabled the teachers and the administrators and the directors to acquire all those necessary ICT skills that are very, very important in the world that we are living in today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Moses. Moving to Goretti, my question to you is, what do you think has been the effect of the shutdown of schools on the students?
Thank you very much, Fancy. Allow me, okay, I want to diverge a little, and for now, kind of like focus on students with disabilities. We have children with disabilities who were in special needs schools, and some of these students, much of the time, they spent most of their time in the schools. So they had less interaction with the parents. And now we had the lockdown. So we had these children going home. So we had these children going home and staying with their parents who did not know how to take care of them, who did not know how to deal with them. So the closure of schools affected some children with disabilities in that they were in homes where most of the parents or like guardians and caretakers are not sure on how to deal with them. So even the little progress that they had made in schools, kind of like they have gone backwards. So when the schools reopen, these students, it will take them some time because, for instance, if we have students, children who have autism, a child has been in school. So when you change their environment, they kind of like take some time to adjust. So when schools open, such students, especially children with disability, especially with some disability, they are going to need counseling services so that the children can be prepared to fit again in the school environment. It's going to take some time to adjust. And then we have children who have not been lucky, whose parents could not afford, or which schools could not afford the online learning or the learning packages. So these children have been at home and they have not been studying. And some of their peers have been studying. Some parents have been having them hired teachers to go and give private lessons. So now you are having a classroom where students are at a different pace. So those children are disadvantaged and they will be kind of like left behind in that classroom. Others will be progressing. They will, no, I think some of them will have covered the syllabus and others will not. So, and these are quite the challenges that have been presented. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Goriti, for giving us the effect on students, especially students with disability. So moving to Fred, Fred, I would like you to look at the question from the perspective of teachers. How has the shutdown of schools affected the teachers?
Well, Fancy, I think Moses touched on this question already. I think when we were for teacher training, a lot of the training scenarios in school practice were like, what do you do when this happens? How do you handle these scenarios? I think the lockdown, hybrid learning, online learning, and the lack thereof of jobs has brought out the biggest innovation. The teachers, I'm very sure the teachers will be getting back to classes and not the same teachers that left the schools 2 years ago. We found new ways of teaching from our bedrooms, sitting rooms. A lot of teachers also found a way of teaching in community. I know communities haven't really understood mostly what happens in classrooms, but the fact that they just know like you leave at this time as a child and you come back by this time as a child. But having taught in homes of the parents observing how the children react and absorb learning, it has actually given a sense of pride to a lot of teachers who had the opportunity to whether coach or tutor students. And for the case of my school, it brought us as teachers closer to the parents because they were able to be there hands-on, like they were almost the teaching assistants. They're always almost the co-teachers because when it comes to task, homework, the revision, the doing of the task has to be supervised by the parents. And I feel that's a linkage that was lacking previously, whether it's private or government schools. Parents used not to inquire. I wouldn't say they didn't want to know, not to the extent of knowing what's going on. How can I help? What can I do? I don't know how to do this. How do you help me? So it was that time when teachers were recognized as specialists in education. But like I think previous speakers have pointed out, there has been far more adverse effects of the lockdown on the teachers as a whole. Teachers' mental health is not the greatest right now. Like someone pointed out, our esteems are down. A lot of them are despised. A lot of them are in survival mode. They were doing odd jobs that you feel that, hey, this is not someone whom we've trained and invested in as a nation to ensure that our children have a brighter future. And now we've abandoned that person for close to 2 years, and we don't know how that teacher is going to cope. I also have a prediction. I know like UNESCO is like, all right, 30% of the students may not come back. I'm very sure a number of teachers have also changed professions. Like it's not something that they had wanted to do, but the fact that essential workers were not considered as teachers, all the others were, brought back in bits in different ways, provided, granted movement permits. Teachers were locked down, like you have to stay in your district. You can't go anywhere. So I'm very sure many teachers have reconsidered the whole career itself. And I'm also very sure that there are very many teachers who have already started different businesses that in a nutshell, won't allow them to come back to school in itself. So I believe that to make teachers be happy, make teachers be more involved and invested in education post-pandemic, schools and government and ministry and all stakeholders need to make teaching an attractive profession again. Like, I don't know how they're going to do that. We'll probably try and throw some ideas on how that can happen. But the fact is, teaching has not been a very rewarding career for the past 2 years. For a few that have been doing it, yes, they could have had new dynamics, they could have seen new aspirations, they could have loved it one way or the other, but as teachers, if there's one thing I've understood about teachers is they understand each other's pain, they understand each other's dynamics. So even if you're a government teacher, you've got your salary, you always think like, okay, a friend of mine that I went to university with is grassing. A friend of mine whom I went to university with is back in the village. They can't do anything. They can't pay for anything. So I feel that as a collective career body, teachers need to have a bigger voice and properly negotiate this reopening. I don't know the people who are sitting at these stakeholder meetings that leads to reopening, but I feel that reopening without considering the mindset of the teachers, their mental health, recuperating all this suffering and damages that have been done to them in a professional way, in a personal way, is going to make it very hard for the teachers to be fully invested post-pandemic. So we need to speak out louder. We need to clearly point out what we need, what we want, because in the end, when we reopen, we're not just going to be teachers, we're going to be pseudo health workers. We'll be fighting the pandemic, teaching the children, and also still trying to make sure that there's a normal classroom environment going on in our schools. So I don't know how that's going to happen, but I feel teachers have an uphill task coming up our way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Fred. Moving to Teacher Peter, before we delve into the discussion of reopening of schools, my question to Teacher Peter is, how best do you think a situation like this should be handled in the future?
Thank you, Fancy. Firstly, by the way, you have a nice name, Fancy. Wow, a very nice name. One of the things that at least we should be done in order to handle this situation well in future, I think, since it's a process and it was an ambush, one of the things that should be done well was basically for us to redefine what is education and what are the objectives of education and who are the major stakeholders in education. So that's one of the major things that we're supposed to do in order to redefine and look at how we can handle it in the future. And this is basically, it's like that we had the best opportunity whereby at least we would have engaged all the parents, all the schools and all the stakeholders into what the ministry wants, because there's a lot that the ministry wants us to do as teachers, as schools, but they didn't come out clearly to share it with us during this time, because this was a golden opportunity. Though it was it was a blessing in disguise. Some of us lost our relatives, but I think one of the salient issues that would have been done is for them to clearly come out and share with us the real objectives of education before and after COVID, and also giving people the responsibilities or empowering people to know their responsibilities so that parents can know their responsibilities beyond paying school fees. Teachers should know their responsibilities beyond teaching. Like the way how Fred has talked about it, currently, when we are going back to schools, it is not going to be like business as usual. It's going to be totally business unusual. And you're going to find that all teachers and all schools have to play the role of rehabilitation centers. So it was also, and I thank the ministry because they came up with those measures whereby they have been conducting series of workshops all over the country in preparing teachers and schools for the reopening of schools. But what should have been done best was basically to support all the stakeholders to understand their role, their cardio role and objectives in education. Because currently you're going to find out that, again, when schools are go back to normal, parents, for them, they're going to continue demanding for their anthem. And what is that anthem? It's a performance. And ask yourself, where is that performance taking us as a nation? People are yearning to get the fours, the 8 in S4 and the 20s in S6, and even the first class degrees at the university. But where are they taking us? So it was an opportunity whereby at least would have sat down, not as the ministry, but all of us, the ministry would have engaged all the stakeholders to design a clear roadmap on where should we go. And if we ever happen to land in this mess again, how can we come out of it? Then there are certain parameters that were not fully exploited. Like the ministry had the issue of learning on using the high-tech learning approaches, whereby one of the high-tech learning approach was the radio and TV, but they had so many issues. One of the issue, like when you're learning via TV, it is more of audio visual. Yes, that is TV. And when you're learning via radio, it is more of kinetic learning or kinesthetic learning. Sorry, no, it is more of audio learning via radio, more of audio learning, simply because I'm only hearing what you're saying, but I'm not seeing what you're saying. Now, the ministry or all the stakeholders would have used this opportunity to find out how can we design the learning whereby as a way of patching the lost and the reverse learning. How can we design systems that can support us in ensuring that even at home learning will continue? So now parents have this in mind that when schools reopen, they are going to just take the entire course and put it on the back of the schools, which is not right. They are going totally to go back to their default mode. So those are some of the things that would have learned, and those are some of the things that would have prepared for in future, just in case if we land into such a scenario. And we would also have looked at what are the things that we need in education. I think that is one thing that we should all talk about as the panelists and all even our viewers. What are the things that we need in education? Is it all about assessing the education that we had before? We have had the people are telling us the scientists, what have the scientists done? What have they come up with apart from just telling us now it is like this, like this? So currently we need scientists who can also support us in producing the vaccines, who can come up with remedies, who can come up with tangible solutions. Not only scientists who are predictors. They can only predict the situation and take us to lockdowns and lockdowns and lockdowns, when other countries they are studying and ours were because of their scientists said so. So there are so many things that we should consider. Which type of scientists do we need in the next era? Do we need scientists who are just there to prescribe drugs and also maybe do the passive role of scientists, or we need scientists who can come up with solutions? That is just one area. But also going into looking at other areas of learning. Were they giving us the right outcome that we're looking at? Or we should look at ways on how we can come up with measures whereby they can give us the right outcomes. So there are some of the things they might look somehow not on track, but I believe they are the core things that we should look at, focus on, and invest most of our time. Because personally, though I'm a teacher, I'm one person who doesn't believe in performance. Yes, performance is just part of it, but I believe in progress. Progress is more than performance. So it was the role of all the stakeholders, including the government, to put it in our mind that yes, as we are going into this, the reopening, currently, let us not over focus on performance, but let us focus on progress and the practical progress. Then also parents buying the idea, but currently, before even go to the reopening, before even anything happens, parents, for them, what they are concerned is just their money, that is the school fees, and their second concern is they want their children to perform. And even the third thing that we have witnessed, and that we are all going to witness come 10th, is a genesis, or an exodus, whereby people are going to skip classes, not one, not two, depending on the physical appearance of a child. The parent can bring a child who was in senior one and tell you they want them in senior four. So those are some of the things that at least would have had let me say, like a clear roadmap from the government, stipulating things clearly that things should be done like this, and this is how we are going to be teaching. So I think that's it. Thank you, Fancy.
Thank you so much, Teacher Peter, for that. Now, turning to 2022 and reopening of schools. I would like to start right away from Moses. So Moses, schools have been locked for a long time. We have the Omicron virus on the rise, and we have government saying we are going to reopen schools come 2022 January. My question to you is, do you think the schools are ready for reopening come January 2022?
Thank you so much, Fancy, for that question. That will depend, it will actually vary from school to school, because I'm sure that there are some schools that will be able to manage the SOPs, the prescribed SOPs, but I'm also sure that a big number of schools may not manage the prescribed SOPs, most especially in the government itself, because that is where there are so many numbers where you find in the school there are around 2,000 children, and even others are boarding. And it becomes extremely difficult for a boarding school with over 1,000 children to do social distance. So what is likely to happen is that people are going to say, yes, we are ready. And of course, everybody would like the schools to be reopened, because people are tired of the situation. People are tired of being at home. Children are growing. Girls are getting pregnant. Children are becoming everything in the society. So we are going to say we are ready, but it is quite difficult to implement the SOPs. However, some schools will manage. They will manage the social distance, especially those that are day scholars and with enough infrastructure, they are likely to manage. On the other hand, I think the government also needs to largely prepare the schools mentally in form of support, because there can be other things that can be done where the numbers are so big. Maybe improvising with tents. Maybe the government can provide some tents. Government can provide some more support, especially to the struggling private schools, such that they are able to put in place all the things that are required for the implementation of those standard operating procedures that are very necessary for the reopening of schools. So some schools will manage, others may not manage, but definitely what people are looking at is that COVID is here to stay. That is one thing that is at everybody's mind.
Moses, for that insight into whether schools are ready. Greta, I would like to also get your perspective from the angle of the university. I know university has been they have been studying even during this time when universities were reopened, students went back to school, and I know exams are even ongoing, even at Makerere itself. So I would like to get your perspective. Do you think the schools and the universities are ready for reopening, full reopening in January?
Thank you very much, Fancy, for that. Yes, the schools and universities are ready for the reopening. For instance, we have Chambogo when there was the closure of the institutions. For them, they closed, and they didn't have online learning. But when November started, they started learning. So the only challenge, okay, we have the SOPs in place, and we have the SOPs in place, and actually right now the students are in the institutions. And the only challenge that is there is the observance of the SOP. So when the students are in class, they'll observe the SOPs because the lecturers are not supposed to teach if the students are not observing the SOPs. So they'll observe them. So the moment they go out, they'll have their discussion groups, and then they'll put the masks off, and then they'll do all sorts of other things which kind of like contributes to the spread of the virus. That's why you have seen on social media there's a letter from the young president of Makere, when she was saying that yes, 3 in 4 students, they have cough, and most of them have taken the test, and they have found that they have COVID or the Omicron. So the vigilance of the SOP by the students outside the classroom has not gone well. This is where institutions and universities and schools need to focus, because that is where the spread has really has come from. So much as the SOPs are in place and all the other things, they need to really get the students to observe them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Goretti. Moving to Fred, we have had some of the issues from the other panelists and would like to get your take as well. Now, my question directly to you is, what challenges do you think the schools are going to face when schools reopen in January?
Thank you very much for that question. It's an interesting question. Ugandan schools always have this catch-up. I don't know if you guys do it in your schools, where when you have national exams coming up, then you have like 3 teachers teaming up on a subject just to finish the topics. You have like external examiners coming to drill the students on how to answer questions and stuff. Reason being because our society demands answers. They demand results in the form of a piece of paper that says D1, D2, F9, you know. I think the biggest challenge schools will find right now is just fitting the kids in class, because I don't mean in the physical sense, but finding where every child is, because lagging for 2 years and a lot of them have not had opportunities to continue reviewing or even learning new things or even revising the olden things that they've learned. And it has been 2 years, something that happened 2 weeks ago, you may not be able to remember. So you wouldn't be able to think a child of senior 3 would be able to remember a chemical equation from 2 years ago. So I think the biggest thing would be the gap in learning. And this is where teachers will be highly challenged, because I know administrators will just demand, like, make sure you catch up the students, make sure there is uniformity, make sure you kind of like provide interventions that helps every child to catch up. And that's a very common phenomenon in private schools, where you have even some students put under tutoring just because you feel like they're a low ability student. And in international schools, we even go ahead to give them personal assistance to help them catch up. But now when we come to the general population, I do not think it's going to be an easy task. Yes, we'll be happy to get back in class. We'll probably choose one particular area of the curriculum to start with, probably one that we feel would be the easiest to restart, and then we'll sequence from there. But the major battle would be, how do I assess children who have not been equally learning for the past 2 years? And then the next question is, what sort of results do I want as a teacher at this moment in time? Like, am I going to measure my students' ability basing on how they score on a test, or am I going to measure my students' ability on how they participate in learning? And how do I measure that participation? Where will I see that effective learning? So a lot of questions are in the minds of teachers. And I have those questions as well, because just like someone pointed out, we're going to be like rehabilitation centers. A lot of children have had their relatives die of COVID, and you have a lot of orphans coming back to school. You have a lot of children who have given birth, like someone pointed out before. So you're going to be dealing with someone who has a lot of problems outside the classroom, but you won't have them fully attentive in your classroom. So all these issues that students are coming back with to our classes are going to be banked onto us as teachers, and we have to creatively think, innovatively think, and find ways to maneuver around and make sure. I just pray that in the next 2 years, at least this generation of learners will have had enough opportunities to experience all the learning tasks and objectives that were intended for their generation, so that they are functional adults, so that they are not traumatized from this lockdown, so that they are effective, workers, they go on to have a career and everything. Especially people who are in the final moments. You talked about universities. A lot of students have not done school practice. School practice is totally different when you do it from a computer vis-a-vis when you actually go to the school and do the practice in school. And so I'm hoping that even the final year students who just graduated have a good feel of training, have a good set of skills that they're able to adapt, and they're able to actually give back to the communities that train them into who they are today. Finally, I think as teachers, we need to take stock. We need to do a SWOT analysis, like as we go back into that classroom, regardless of what the administration says, regardless of what the ministry says. What are our strengths right now? What are our weaknesses that we need to plug? What are the threats to our own educational journey? And then, and only then, can we find the opportunities that can help us actually to overcome all those challenges, to make sure we plug in all the gaps. I know we will make it. Teachers have been creative since the beginning of time. So I trust us. I believe in us. I know we can do it. And if there's one group of professionals who can make sure the whole community in the next 5 years do not remember this as a traumatic experience, it's us, the teachers, to make sure that we revive the community and bring back a taste of experience of life and excitement for the future from our classrooms. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred, for that. And we hope that the teachers, schools, and the different stakeholders are able to listen to this, watch it, and we plan ahead of the challenges that we see coming our way. So thank you. Moving to Teacher Peter. So my question to you is on automatic promotion. As a teacher, what is your take on automatic promotion?
Okay, good question. Firstly, I won't get tired to appreciate you, Fancy, and all the panelists. How I wish this discussion would land in the ears of all the Ugandans, parents, and all the various stakeholders. It's very fruitful. Yes, automatic promotion. First and foremost, I'm a teacher. I'm also a teacher trainer. I was hired by the Ministry of Education, I think 2 weeks ago. I was in the Western Uganda, basically training trainers. Yes, and these are mainly the principals, the DEOs, and the head teachers who have been cascading the trainings in like on level 2 and even on school level. So with that, I also learned so many things. And I also participated in the trainings that were in Kampala fully, whereby we trained so many teachers within in Machinde Division, Kampala Central, and in other divisions of Kampala. Basically in the preparation for the reopening. Now, before looking at the automatic promotion as automatic promotion, which was anyway allowed by the government, it also goes back to this point. Even if when the government had said they wouldn't allow it, as a parent, which parent would allow their child to go back? A parent like a child who was in P1, which parent would allow their child to go back to P1? So there are situations whereby you have no option, but at least to just allow it go or to let it go. The government, their hands were tied, and the hands of the schools are tied. And right now, it is even going to be worse. Now, so many people are looking at the automatic promotion of one class. Currently, schools are going to invest a lot in managing lost time and lost learning. But also parents are also very innovative, trying to manage their lost time. Because a parent whose child has been seated at home for 2 years, they can't allow a child who was in senior 1, they can't take them to senior 2. I would like to be very honest and sincere. They will do all what it takes to see that the child goes to senior 3 for 2 factors. Firstly, the child is growing old, and secondly, the resources themselves they're scarce. So there's no way how a person or how parents are going to allow to become true victims of the circumstance. So they will try to also manipulate the situation. So they will go in for that opportunity of one class, that allowance by the government, but they're also going to go beyond that. And this is going to go back to schools that will put up stringent measures that are for us as a school, we won't take this child for ABCD. The truth is, parents have learned that regardless of how a person learns, they will learn anyway. So they will do whatever it takes to see that they get other options. If you refuse the child in your school because they have come and they have failed the interview, they will look for plan B. And at this time, people are not going to look for the best schools in teaching. People are going to look for convenient schools. Firstly, financially, and even schools that can understand them. So those ones that might have this, that now this is our school, it has a legacy, it has this. The legacy must be protected, but also we have to put in consideration that parents have their own opinions and their own agenda, and even the learners. Let me share a live scenario with my own sister. She was informed to before the lockdown. Uh, Currently, she was supposed by now she was supposed to be, or she's supposed to be in senior four. And this is the person who told me, teacher, I'm not going back to school. I told her why. She told me no. Now I'm grown up. I can't go back and sit in senior two. Neither can I sit even in senior three. At least take me to a course. If you don't take me to any course, I asked her, which course would you prefer? She tells me, take me maybe to tailoring uh, or catering. But look at those things. That's a myopic thinking. But there we have to sit like elders, mature people. Not You're not sitting with a person now as a sister, as a young sister, but you're sitting with a person because she's the one who's going to be in class, regardless of the force you put on her. She's the one who is she's the final consumer. So sat down with her, then we had to discuss. And the truth is, I wouldn't like to lie you. Our conclusion was, she said the only thing that I can settle for now is senior four. And if you look at her height, you look at her size, you can't take her to senior three. And those are the victims of the circumstance. So the automatic promotion here, I think if there is anything that schools have ever done better, all schools should prepare for what they call a hard run for our money. This is going to be a hard bite for the money, because at the end of the day, people are going to bring learners and they will demand for a lot. So what can be done better? Like this is one of the things that we have been training all teachers and the school leaders in the various workshops that we have organized so far. We even had one 1 week ago before Christmas. Yes. But we have been telling them one thing. At least have what they call preparational meetings, parent expectational meetings, whereby the school can share with the parents and the parents can share with the schools their expectations. And these things don't end in verbal formalities. They should be put in paper. A school should have what they call templates. And those templates should be filled in by parents so that parents can know exactly what the school is ready to offer and what the parent also their role is. So at the end of the day, when we come to evaluate the promises between the two parties, the parent and the school, at least we should find a level ground. If not that, the moment schools put in that weak link whereby we only tell parents that you just bring the money and leave the rest to us, those people will demand for a lot, and that what is going to happen, teachers are going to burn out. Now, look at this scenario whereby a child is skipping two classes. They're skipping two classes whereby they have been learning extensively at home. But I can tell you this, regardless of how we have been teaching children at home online, that learning can't be quantified to even 60% because it has its own challenges. Like one of the challenges that was mentioned, I think teacher Fred mentioned it, it was about the monitoring at home or the supervision. Education has a lot to do with supervision. And learning at home, basically the online approach. You have been dealing with parents who don't supervise. A person will just give the child the data and the iPad or the tab or anything, the learning gadget, and they leave them like that. So at the end of the day, you find that the supervision itself wasn't that perfect. And you find that some teachers, as a way of placing the appeasement approach to parents, simply because they have been giving us money, the person could tell them, now your child is fit to sit UNEB. A person who was in P5, they tell them, this child is now fit to sit UNEB because you have covered content of P5, you have covered content of P6. Now the one who was in senior 2, they are given that assurance. So you find that most parents are also relying on that my child has been homeschooling and the teacher told me that the child is fit to sit for the final exam. So it is going to be a very, very complicated situation. And one thing that we all have to observe and appreciate and acknowledge, that most people might think it's going to be, this will go out just in months. But the truth is, put this in writing. we are in this scenario for the next 3 to 5 years, 3 to 5 years, whereby when we have not yet recovered fully. And one of the recovery approach that would have employed in education would be basically sieving the curriculum, what is needed and what is not needed. There are things that we teach, yet we want them, but there are things that we teach and they are very needed. And currently, because of the modernization, I think this is information. It's like basically it should be going on the implementation strategies. Like there is information that people can get on their own, like the knowledge information. Who was the when did Uganda get independence? Uh, why did maybe the British Columbia collapse? Those things, those are some of the things that shouldn't be taught in this era, because they're going to spoil our time, they're going to spoil our passion, and even at the end of the day, we are going to be competing. You who is teaching at school, you are going to be competing with the TV. A child who has spent 2 years on TV, and you who is just using the blackboard as a teaching tool, there will be so many issues. So skipping that automatic promotion is good, but it is not going even to be just single. There are going to be 2 classes, and if a school refuses to allow that, I promise you this, that those parents will take their kids. They don't mind about where they have taken them. And even at the end of the day, I think we all have the scenario that happened last year when they were marking UNEP. You find that people passed, but ask yourself a question: was that passing genuine, or the pass mark was lowered? So if parents, some of them have that history and they have that confidence, if I manage to get this girl of mine, because I saw so many who got their children from P5 and they sat for UNEP, and most of them passed in second grade and others even in first grade. So if parents have that, they still have that win mentality of the past testimonies, they will at least go for them. They will at least, because I saw yesterday, there's one of our parents who came and said, no, teacher, the child was in primary 3, but I'm taking the child to P5. Then I said, why? Because the boy has grown, that is one. And secondly, I'm also not having the money to patch up those missed years. So there's a lot to look at, and from all angles, from the perspective of the parents, the learners as the consumers, and finally, the schools. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Teacher Peter, for that. Moving to Moses, being a head teacher of a school, and looking at all the challenges that had been presented by the shutdown of schools, do you think the curriculum can still be implemented the way it is? Or do you think there should be a change?
Thank you so much. Should the curriculum be implemented as it should have been, or should there be a change? Like most people have already presented, definitely there is need for at least a bit of a change because of 3 things. One, we all appreciate that there was missed learning, and that is a fact. There was missed learning whereby children did not learn what they were supposed to learn. That's one. Two, there was regressed learning whereby children learned things either virtually or some of them claiming at home physically or on radio, and they totally forgot whatever they learned. And then definitely we also have lost learning whereby people, they don't know what they are supposed to be knowing at a given level. Now, all of those cannot be treated as if it is normal. And that means that definitely there is need to adjust our approach to the curriculum in form of looking at critical and key things that a child is supposed to be knowing, the competencies that a child is supposed to be having at a particular level. And of course, in order to catch up, like my friend Peter has already put it, in order to catch up, then we can't implement the curriculum in the same way. It means that some things will slightly be put aside in order to be able to catch up with the time, so that we are able to complete what children are expected to be knowing or to have looked at a given level. What does that mean? It means that given schools or different schools that we are implementing, especially curriculum in its totality, by engaging children not only in class, but also outside the classroom in form of different activities, in the form of different clubs, in the form of different communities, then I am sure that those things will have to be adjusted a bit. In fact, we are likely to see some schools putting aside most of the co-curricular activities, clubs, swimming in some schools, handwork in up-country schools, and all those, they are likely to be put aside in order for the teachers to be able to touch this, and that. Then secondly, we are likely to see also teachers, of course, with different the administration of different schools, they are likely to skip some things in preference of teaching certain things so that they are able to be to manage. Otherwise, if you are to go and you look at the whole curriculum as it should be, and you are supposed to teach whatever you are supposed to teach children of a given class in its full totality, then it may not be possible. And therefore, we are likely to move a bit faster to catch up with the time, to catch up with missed learning, to catch up with lost learning, to catch up with regressed learning. And in an attempt to do that, the curriculum will not be implemented in the same way it should have been implemented. People are going to skip some topics, and the moment the teacher or the departments know that we looked at this topic in this class, and it somehow repeats, because at least the good thing with the curriculum, especially the national curriculum and particular subjects, it tends to be spiral. It tends to be spiral in a sense that some topics tend to be repetitive, and therefore teachers are likely to skip those things, and they are likely to say, now since you looked at sets in this class, we are not going to look at sets this time. Let's go to something else, because they are trying to be where they are supposed, where they think they are supposed to be. And like you said, the curriculum is not likely to be implemented the way it should have been implemented. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Moses. Moving to Goreti. When we started the discussion today, I started with giving a report from the National Planning Authority, where they say that 30% of students and pupils are most likely not to return to their learning desk due to issues of teenage pregnancy, child labor, among others. I would like to specifically pick one issue, and that is issues of teenage pregnancy. How do you think it should be handled?
Thank you very much, Fancy. The issue of the teenage pregnancy, these young mothers or these young girls they need some counseling, they need some rehabilitation, and just because they gave birth, there are so many girls, when you look at the statistics, there are so many girls who gave birth during the lockdown, so they should be given a chance to go back to school. Even as right now, when you look at the university statistics, when you look at the numbers of the students that we had before COVID-19 and after, okay, not after, but still, so many people, so many students have dropped out. Actually, recently, Makerere has had to re-advertise again, I think like for the second time for students to apply to the university. So many people have dropped out, and because of the finances. So even these girls that have that gave birth during the lockdown, the ones that have babies, they need to be counseled if the parents can still afford for them to go back to school. Mechanisms should be put in place so that they can help these children to go back to school, because the repercussions of these children or these girls not being in school are many. The more they spend, schools were a safe haven for them. The students will be in school, they will not have a lot of free time on their hands, but if they are denied the chance to go back to school, they'll end up in child marriages, they'll end up giving more giving birth to more children. And remember, they are at a young age. Some of them, they have had to have operations, cesarean, to give birth because their bodies were not ready for childbirth anyway. So the government should be, the government actually, I call upon the government and even the religious leaders and the community, they should be supportive. They should put mechanisms in place. Yes, it happened that these children, they got pregnant and they gave birth, but they should be supported to go back to school. And all this will help in the long time in reducing poverty and so many others. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Goretti. Now, Fred, bringing Fred into the discussion. So, Fred, everybody is preparing for reopening of schools, and I would like to pick out parents for this particular question. How best should parents prepare their pupils and students for going back to school come January 2022?
How best can parents prepare their children for school? Parenting is no easy feat. There is no proper guidelines on how to parent. But I do think that the parents emerging out of the pandemic, having experienced how much it takes to raise a child in a classroom, how much it takes to impart knowledge, how much it takes to get those results that we look on a piece of paper. I think it will be good for parents to commit themselves to knowing, inquiring, and supporting the teachers as well. Because once parents are in the know, even if resources are limited, it creates a sense of community, creates a sense of teamwork that makes the teachers know that I am not abandoned with this child who has this problem, this problem, this problem. And then two, parents should also prepare a comprehensive information on the condition of their child. Just like Goretti pointed out, yeah, teachers live in communities, but we do not go, fact finding on each child. So it's each parent who needs to come and update the class teacher, update the head teacher, whether there's a school counselor note, whether senior woman teacher or senior male teacher, any of those. The fact is, our children's complete information of life in the past 2 years needs to be provided and updated to the teachers. And who is supposed to do that? Is the guardians and the parents. Why do I ask for this? Because it prepares the teachers on how best to help those children. Another thing is, parents shouldn't put pressure on their children. I know we have parents who are like, okay, in my time, I got distinction 1 in this, I got this is so easy, you shouldn't fail it. We shouldn't be very hard on our children, because just like the way the pandemic has affected us adults, children have their own pressures. We have a bunch of children who've been living in very large families, they've hit puberty, they have no proper guidance. They're coming back to a school with a lot of issues, like already pointed out. Someone is looking much bigger, someone has grown a little fatter, someone looks a little thinner, someone is a little taller, others have grown beard. And of course, you have all those issues that your child is coming back to school with. So find time and have a conversation with your child. Ask them how they feel about going to school. It's not about just paying tuition, providing transport, and making sure they're off to school. Have that heart-to-heart conversation with your child. Find out what they think. I know one of the panelists pointed out, like, okay, some children might be thinking like, okay, I need to branch out. I need to do something else. It's totally a healthy conversation, according to me. Let them express all that and try to provide your perspective as an adult and say, okay, I am still willing to help you do this. What dreams do you still have? These are conversations, fancy, that our parents rarely hold with our children. It's in fact left to the schools to organize career seminars, which you have like 200 children in there, and you're supposed to inspire them and have them tell you what they want to be in the future and trying to equip them. Families need to step in. Raising a child takes the whole village, and that includes the parents, the teachers, stakeholders in the ministry, even the community health experts. Sexual reproductive education should be one of our focuses when we come back to school. We're going to get boarding schools in mixed schools where children have suddenly grown, they've not gotten used to school rules, they don't know about whether it's bad touches, body changes. Those are things that parents need to involve themselves in knowing and understanding those perspectives on those kind of things that we continue to misbehavior, indiscipline, and ignorance of the different parts of life that, it's a normal thing, but we could mitigate the bad impacts if we are prepared for it. And then lastly, I think parents should have expressed like, I'm tired, like children need to go back to school. But no, I think parents love their children so much and they want the best for them. So how can we do that? We have to be excited enough to have the children be excited enough to go to school. Because if you're just saying like, all right, children are going back to school, good riddance, like I'm finally free, like let the teachers deal with it, then the children just find themselves like a problem. I have heard of a lot of girls who just one at school is home and inform the teacher of all the conversations you've done. That will help the teacher also to continue that process and begin the healing process for this generation. Otherwise, we are going to have a huge loss if we only think of finances, we only think of the brooms, the chairs, the TP, reams of paper. So I think as parents, this is a chance for us to do better, having had a lot of time to see our children and see the best in them. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much, Fred. Moving to Teacher Peter. So previously, when schools were reopened and these pupils and students went back to school, there was spread of the virus, and there was a report that came out from government that when the students came back home, they gave their parents COVID, and then there was also an issue of schools concealing COVID-19 results. So my question to you is, this time, how best can the schools prepare for reopening of schools, of the different schools, or especially on issues of preventing the spread of COVID-19 pandemic while still keeping the students at school?
Thank you, Fancy. I think that one, like it starts with three things: people accepting and acknowledging that we are still under the COVID period, that it's still there. Those schools will be reopened. It doesn't mean that COVID is over. It is still there. So we should simply observe the SOPs. That's the basic thing. Then one of the things, the simple thing that schools should do, basically, if at least we don't want to go into the rat cage, is working on being serious. By the being very serious, uh, like if it comes to the sitting arrangement, being very serious. Just that, unfortunately, we schools haven't had any budget, because at the end of the day, these preparations are not just mere preparations whereby you just do them by the word of mouth. These things, some of them need a budget. Like even the sitting arrangement, a school can be having the spacious rooms, but when they don't have the desks or the lockers, so when they need that fund to see that they invest, or they put in more furniture to see that the children can sit well. And this is it. The government did come in to put in that budget. So schools should do a lot to see that, or for themselves to see that at least they get some of those things. Is they wash their hands, a parent or a learner, and then also minimizing on the number of visitors that visit the schools. Let a person come when it's necessary. Schools that can afford at least to see that parents don't over visit the school, mainly bringing bank slips or dropping their children at school. You should look at those possibilities, whereby at least even if the person is dropping the child at school, let them first sanitize them. Those ones who can manage, first sanitize. You as also as a school, do it. Then at budget, it is quite let us have miles at school that can help us in acting as the first aiders, or people who can at least help us in supervising and monitoring. As other schools might be having those people, but those ones that might not be having them, at least try to see that you empower one teacher to have the right knowledge on how they can create their teams in schools that can support the system, they support the teachers, they support the learners, so that they can always remind them that we are still under COVID. Because one thing is for sure, when people go back to school, it's very hard to maintain the auspices because at times kids have to play. They can't play in isolation. They play in groups. Look at it when they are mainly entering classes. They don't enter one by one. They enter in groups. So, but the basic things that can be put in place, like the face masks, at least let us ensure that parents that can't afford, as a school, try to see ways on how you can have them. At times, if one parent can buy, a parent can be in position to buy maybe a mask of 2,000 or 5,000, and you will know that those ones who might not be able to afford, those ones who afford can, that money can help you to cater for those ones who cannot afford. But at least let us ensure that all our children have masks, and even let us also ensure that they stop the habit of sharing. You find that that age is a social stage. They are still at the social stage whereby they share a lot. You find that during break time, this one might go and buy maybe a bottle of juice, and after sipping 1, 2, 3, the other one will also use the same bottle, sip 1, 2, 3. So it continues like that. So let us endeavor to see that yes, the sharing might not end because that is our Umbutu and the African life. But at least let us teach them while sharing, give them maybe the juice or water in their own bottles. Let's say a person brings their bottle, then you pour in theirs, than using the same drinking position to take juice. So those are some of the things that we should look at. Then the other thing is yes, when the schools reopened, the cases increased in the way that we couldn't alter. But currently, look at it right now. They have not schools have not yet reopened, but the cases are increasing. And at the end of the day, when schools will reopen, they will put the entire blame on the weaker side, and again, those are the schools. So at the end of the day, in order for us to play it safe, let us try to see that we have our records clean as schools. And whenever you have, let me say, those suspicions, I think the Ministry of Health and the district task forces on COVID should be very clear on the communication channels, because other people are saying, remember when we were in the Western, people who are saying they could call and people couldn't come. They could call 2 days and no one has responded. So if a person calls once, twice, and no one has responded, it simply means they won't hold the information, but they will not share, because they know even if when they tell you, you will do nothing. And the other thing is, most people what they are fearing, that if I communicate, my school will be closed. So which assurance should the government or the Ministry of Health and Education put in place that no, this is a mere disease, or it's just a disease? Even if when you are communicating, we shall do the needful without closing the school. So if you look at um, the health department, yes, we strongly agree that COVID is very dangerous. Some of us we lost relatives. Personally, I lost a father. But the way how people are taking it is as if it is a very lethal disease. It's a very lethal virus. Yes, it might be a disease, but we can learn how to live with it. And we should just learn how to have a symbiotic relationship between the task forces and the schools, whereby at times before them reporting to the task forces, let them also organize sessions whereby maybe on TV, radio, to collect views, to collect opinions from parents, from teachers. But they are not, they don't do that. And at the end of the day, they are going to start blaming the schools have done less, they have not done this or that. Then finally, when we come to the infrastructure, let us at least put things on the right wing scale. Ask yourself a simple question. Yes, we have been in COVID, schools have been in COVID, the government has also been in COVID, the parents too, and all, even the learners. But how many infrastructures did the government put in place to fight the pandemic? How many? Now, if theirs too were not adequate, let them not expect schools to perform miracles, and yet they have not been supported. So at least it should be a relationship whereby support me, I support you. The government should support schools. Basically, they would also have come up with a policy or a system whereby before the schools reopen, at least there should be a fund, or not, it might not be necessarily a grant, but a fund or a revolving fund whereby maybe each school is going to get 500,000, just mere 500 or 1 million, not all, but those ones that would like to get it anyway, because those ones that are okay. And that fund would be basically for, let me say, disinfecting the entire schools, buying those hand washing facilities, at least a school are getting the temperature gun, because so many don't have them, and they don't have them simply because they don't want to have them. No, they don't have them simply because they're financially handicapped. So it should be a symbiotic approach of doing things whereby the government would also have supported them. But the responsibility lies with us, as schools, we in schools, to see that we support the learners, we support the teachers, and we support the parents to know that the COVID hasn't gone out, and even the Omicron, we have a new variant, and how are you going to manage it? So it also goes back to the point, like Mr. Our HM talked about it, Ms. Moses Rukundo, that a number of things are going to be omitted, like I don't know, yeah, maybe you don't know any other, like a number of things are going to be omitted, like the co-curricular activities are going to be omitted. But these are some of the activities that are remedies to the COVID, because at the end of the day, if a person is fit, the person is having a very functioning system, internal system, they have higher chances of beating the virus. But if we give them a lot of food, a lot of sitting, a lot of work, the outcome might be very, very diverse, or it might be very, very grave. And then also looking at the aeration in our schools, schools that at least can work on their aeration. Let them work on that as soon as possible to see that the aeration is more improved, more convenient, at least to support the learners when schools reopen. Thank you very much, Fancy.
Okay, thank you so much, Peter. I will let Moses start right from where you stopped. What policies do you think, what other policies additional to what Moses has given, I mean, to what Peter has given us, what other policies do you think government should put in place as schools reopen come January 2022?
Thank you so much, Nancy, for the question. Of course, largely the policies should be around health and safety. Should be more of health and safety, such that the schools take the issue of health and safety as a very important issue. That one, it should be clearly communicated to all the schools in form of adjusted or maybe supported SOP implementations. Then, apart from the health and safety, then we also need maybe some kind of a policy in terms of finances, financial policy. How do we support these struggling schools? Because they are there. And like Peter has pointed out, there are some schools where even buying a temperature gun can be a challenge. They want it, but they cannot afford it. And that can be quite challenging. There are some schools where even buying hand washing facilities is quite a challenge. And therefore, what is the government doing? I think the government needs to come up with some kind of a financial policy on how they can lend to the schools and they are able to recoup or to get back the money that was extended to the schools in form of maybe grants, indeed for those that need it, and I am sure that most of them will need it, including, by the way, even the government schools, because we have passed around some government schools and you just see hanging jerrycans that those are hand washing facilities. Then, so that policy should be there so that the government knows we are going to do A, B, C, D in terms of financial assistance to the schools, and we shall be able to get back our money that was extended to the schools using in this way. That is financial policy. Then health and safety, indeed, who is supposed to implement what? Who should follow up on what? What should be the reporting system? What should be maybe the penalty for those that are not implementing the SOPs? Or to what extent can we penalize the schools? Otherwise, if the penalty again is also too high, then indeed the schools will keep on hiding important information. However, I also have a feeling that initially the schools were fearing closure. And indeed, even contracting COVID was initially it was as if it was something that was abnormal. People had not accepted, people had not embraced COVID as a disease that is here to be with us and actually stay with us longer. But at the moment, at least now people, different families have contracted the disease, others have gone through it, others have recovered, and therefore telling someone that so-and-so is having COVID is no longer as scary, is no longer as caring as it used to be. And therefore, health and safety policy by the government extended to the schools is very important. Then also another policy should be in terms of the protocols. In terms of the protocols, what are some of the protocols that are supposed to be followed by the school, by the classrooms, inside the classrooms, by the community? So all those protocols need to be disseminated to all the stakeholders so that everybody is fully aware of what is supposed to be done, what procedures should be followed, what systems are in place, and so on and so forth. So we need clear protocols that are clearly communicated by the government to the schools and the different stakeholders. We need health and safety policy. We need a financial policy that can guide the government on how they support the communities, including non-state organizations that can also play crucial roles because they are also there. We have had some organizations, Cheshire, Children at Risk Action Network, Compassion, and so on and so forth. Edify, I can't mention all of them, that have come up to lend a hand, to give a hand, to extend a hand to some struggling schools. So we need such policies that national can regulate all those transactions such that schools are able to move on. Thank you.
So Goretti will continue. Yes, Goretti.
Okay, thank you very much, Fancy. Like I was saying, it's important for the government to it's important for the government and other stakeholders to invest in ICT. When we look at the statistics before that pandemic, we had many public universities. I'll give an example of the public universities, recent Makerere and MOOCs, which had e-learning platforms in place. But these e-learning platforms were not really used by the lecturers and the students themselves. And so when the pandemic comes in, we had to have people, students and lecturers using the ICTs for continuity and learning. However, some of them were not quite very comfortable. The skills for using the gadgets, the laptops, the smartphones for learning, they were quite very limited. So there were refresher courses for both the lecturers, for both the students, so that they can use online learning. So I believe it's quite imperative for the government going on forward. Training the teachers, actually, it should be rolled out even right from that teaching practice. It should be revised that ICT should be integrated into the curriculum. And even when you look at the primary schools, most of the schools do not, the students start using the ICT, the laptops or the computers when maybe, let's say, they are in P5, but now that is late. So as early as P1, students should be able, they should be exposed to computers. They should be able to be familiar and use computers. And I think the telecom companies, at least we have had MTN Uganda, they were able to offer data for the e-learning platform for the most public universities. Okay, for most universities, which was quite good. And I think also Airtel is also following up on something like that. So going forward, it's important for all the stakeholders to consider an investment in ICTs, in the skills, in the skills, in the equipment as early as possible. And the government should also come in to subsidize, because there are schools that cannot be able to afford these laptops. And we have organizations which are out there that that offer second-hand computers or laptops. Unfortunately, when those laptops and computers reach here, the tax on them is quite very high. So right now we need to rethink these policies and see how we can enable the acquisition of ICTs to enable learning. Thank you very much.
Fancy, can I add something to what
Yes.
Corette has said?
Okay, please do.
Okay, I think now we are at a point of no retreat, no surrender, because where the world is heading, it is heading to everything. It is e-commerce, it is e-business, it is everything. If you are behind in terms of technology, you can be sure that the world will leave you behind indeed. And therefore, I think it is very, very important that of all the ministries, I think, from security to agriculture, education, health, ICT, I think now should be very, very well facilitated. Because wherever you will go, you will see people using ICT skills. Go to the rural villages, up country, from Kabongo to Kisoro to Kasese. When there is a barrier, I've traveled to those places. The DJs, when they are playing whatever they are playing, they use computers. And you see them with laptops, and they are playing whichever music they want to play using laptops. See how people are having lunch these days with Jumia. You just order for food online with Jumia. Look at these folks, the borders, safe border. The guys are on ICT using the gadgets to order for whatever they are doing with safe border. The little children at home. I have a child who has not started school, but when I reach home and I press my phone down, the guy is just there. I don't know how he gets into the icons to know that this icon has games, and he is there playing games on my phone. Hasn't started school yet. So that means that the issue of ICT and its facilitation by the country must be taken as a very, very serious issue going forward in terms of the socio-economic development of this country. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Before I move to Fred, let me get back to Goretti a bit. So Goretti, how best should government handle issues of students with disability in cases during shutdown of schools?
Thank you very much, Fancy, for that question. The government should still put in place mechanism to facilitate students with disabilities. First of all, the government should carry out a different needs assessment on the students with disabilities, because different students with disabilities have different requirements. So an assessment into the learning needs and what kind of gadgets that would enable their learning is quite very important. And then the Ministry of Education, we have the Ministry of Education, there's a Department of Special Needs, and then we also have the Ministry of Social and Social Development. We have a Minister of Disability. So I believe these two line ministries can work together to help these students with disabilities to be able to get the assistive devices. When you look at the assistive devices and technologies, they are quite very expensive. Braille is very expensive, the paper and printing it. And then we have screen readers like JAWS, which is like $1,000. All these are very expensive, and the government should come in to support the students with disabilities to be able to acquire the assistive devices and technologies that they need to enhance their learning. And then even the ones which are being sold, I think they should be really, I know it is quite very outrageous, but they should, I call for a non-zero tax on them. They are very expensive. And when you look at the students with disabilities who really they have to catch up for so many things. They have to pay for the school fees, they have to pay for the help fund, they have to pay for the guide, and then they have to pay for the assistive technology. So the costs are quite very high. And most of the time you find that some of them actually drop out of school. So this is where we call on the government to come in and support students with disabilities, get the assistive devices and technology that they need for their education. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Goretti. Now moving to Fred. So Fred, what lessons do you think we have learned from all this as a country?
That's a funny question, Ms. Gender. The history of Uganda shows a lot of very little unlearning of our practices that leads us to a lot of problems, especially in the education sector. We've had a lot of interventions and rush programs that are not assessed. And like someone pointed out, we barely do any needs assessment. We do a lot of stakeholder conferences, stakeholder seminars and trainings, but we don't really gather the much needed information from the ground in implementation and in evaluation. For example, I can point to the UPE, the USE, that we've always, touted as the best innovation to keep our children in school. It provides the basic education that we require as a nation. But in the end, it's just business as usual, like all our pleas, all our conversations kind of end in these brilliant forums that we sit in. And I would say time will tell if as a country we've learned something, but I do confirm that from the perspective of the children, the teachers, and the parents, there is quite a big observation of why education is such a vital aspect of a society and why education needs proper investments and all the loopholes that were hidden in, behind the charade of administrators trying to sell a school as the best, touting it as, we're not profit making, we're only caring about the students, has been seen. You've seen in the first lockdown when some schools probably even tripled their school fees just because they were like, oh, we're buying masks, we're getting, the hand-washing point, the way Mr. Moses was pointing out. So I think the lesson here for us is education is quite expensive, more expensive than we seem to imagine. And there is a big inequality in education in Uganda. I speak about this in the sense that being in an international school, I am able to have a lot more resources, a lot more understanding parents and administrators who readily provide what I ask. And whenever there's a challenge, I have people I can call, I have skills that I can train on, I have professional development courses that comes every month or every 2 months, every 3 months, which these inset days make me better prepared for the recurrent problems and problems that have just arrived due to the pandemic itself. And when I'm back in classrooms, my children themselves, they are able to see the different strategies that I employ. But when you are restricted by, let's say, attitude of the administration in the school, the meager resources that you have, you just get back to the same strategies, like notes, right on the board, talk. At the end of the day, you're done. And it, like someone pointed out, it leads to a lot of burnout. I'm just hoping that at least as a nation, we begin to appreciate the hustle. I call it a hustle of the teachers. It's not just an enjoyable, peaceful career that you wake up with a smile on your face, go to the classroom, do all this work, come back very satisfied and proud. No, there's a lot of problems in the middle of the day, because in there you have to deal with all this stigma, you have to deal with this meager pay, you have to deal with these limited resources. So I don't think in the past we've learned anything. I don't think right now we are showing you have learned, because the preparations, like we pointed at the beginning of this discussion, seems to be very rushed, seem to be less research, seem to be not financed as well. And so I don't think there's clear lessons that we've learned, but I do hope that there are lessons we have picked, whether as individuals, whether as teachers in the career, whether as administrators or the ministry or as a nation. Let there be some changes going forward, because this is like a reboot, like a reset for us. It's a big chance for us to bounce back better. And how we do that is going to determine what lessons we take from this. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Fred. Moving to Teacher Peter, my last question to you is that what do you think all this have on the future of education in this country?
Thank you, Fancy. Yes, I think what all this has on the future of education for our country, like I would like, as I started, I would like to end the way as I started. I think the future of our education in our country, it is the high time for us to rethink and redesign on which education do we need. The education we want or the education we need. And the education we want basically focuses on performance, focuses on competition, it focuses on answering the answered questions. The ones that you are answering, your children will answer, the one that your great grandparents answered, and your grandparents also answered. That is the education we basically we want. And it focuses on generally on prioritizing the learners. Now, if you go to the education we need, it mainly focuses on answering the unanswered questions. We have so many unanswered questions in our nation, but we are still answering because ask yourself, if me as a teacher, I'm able to support learners to answer those questions and they pass, but those answers that they give, they don't make an impact in my life. What does it mean? It simply means that education became more of a formality. And the education we need basically focuses on cooperation. For it, it mainly focuses on kindness. It is not a business like the education we want. And here it puts the teacher first. So going forward, as a nation, if we are to at least, if we are very passionate about making Africa, making Uganda a better place for our children, we should look at how we can use this same scenario to transform and overhaul the education and also change the mindset, not only as the government, but also as the parents. What do they want? What do parents want? Should we just focus on the academics? Should we just focus on the papers? Or we should just look at what a child can do? Look at it in this way. Up to now, you find that we don't even make matchboxes of our own. We import them. And 80% of the things that are in town, 80% are imported. But we are very comfortable continuing to teach our children the way we teach with an objective of just passing examination, whereby we tell them, learn, study very hard, become a doctor, get a good job, become a lawyer, build a good house, marry, then die. So you find that we have very limited or very myopic, we have a very myopic vision about our nation. And at the end of the day, I strongly believe one thing that we should learn from this COVID situation, that and what we didn't learn. If you look at it, the way how parents gambled with their children, whereby yes, it was at times it is very hurting. But if you look at the pregnancy levels and all that, it simply means that there is one thing where we didn't handle the education in the right way. Should education be conducted at school? Who is the first teacher? Is the first teacher the one at school, or the first teacher is the one at home? And even also going back on the media, what is the media disseminating? What is their role in educating the nation? Should we just keep comfortable like on Friday and other days you find when the evening all throughout the major thing that they are doing or that they are disseminating is entertainment, politics, and sports? Is it the nation that we want? So at the end of the day, there are so many things. Basically, so many people, when we talk about education, people think about schools. But for me, that's not the way how I get education. When we talk about education, I look at it as a societal thing whereby each person has a role to play. The media, the churches, uh, uh, the parents, so those are the homes, those are the societies, and the schools. So the schools just play 30%, but the 70% should be determined by us. So I think that is one of my parting shots, that we should look at ways on how we can, as a nation, work on those areas, how we should promote the education we need, not just the education we want. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Peter. We have come end of today's talk show, I'll give the panelists an opportunity to give closing remarks in 1 minute each. I'll start from Moses.
Thank you. Thank you, Fancy, for the opportunity to be here with other colleagues. I take this chance also to say that COVID is here to stay, and therefore we should just adapt, and just learn how to live with it so that life can continue. Otherwise, thank you very much. Be blessed.
Thank you, Moses. Let me move to Goretti.
Thank you very much, Fancy, and thank you, the other panelists for this conversation. I have learned a lot of things. My closing remark, I want to call upon the concerned stakeholders that we have schools reopening, but no one is really looking into the educational needs of students and children with disabilities. So this is an area that the government should be able to consider, and the other stakeholders. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Goretti. Moving to Fred.
I want to say I admire how passionate Goretti is about children with disabilities. I think if there's one thing I have known in international schools is all children are treated with different levels of disability and different personal needs and individualistic needs. So I think it's something that we need to tout. We need to inform the nation that, hey, we have a group of children who need extra care, not just like the basic, or give them soap, give them, this, and then the schools can reopen. Otherwise, thank you very much, Ms. Fancy. This has been a wonderful discussion. It's always an informed discussion when teachers meet and they talk. So I'm happy. I'm hoping that a few of these ideas get through to all the planners and people who are going to reopen. We wait to see the results. I am very happy and I look forward to a better nation because of our hard work. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fred. Let's have Peter.
Firstly, I would like to appreciate the organizers, SSG, I think that's it, and Civic Space TV for this opportunity, plus all the panelists for sparing your time, precious time to be here, since it's also the festive season. Thank you very much. And thank you, Goretti, for holding and carrying the banner so high about the children with a disability, the learners, and also the teachers. And my parting shot would be one that at the end of the day, as a teacher and all the teachers all over the world, we should do one thing. We should go and do our best and leave the rest to God. God, if we just do our best, God will help us and do the rest. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I would like to extend my gratitude to Center for Constitutional Governance and Civic Space TV for organizing this community talk show. It has been very articulate and a lot of issues came up, and I know that it will be able to reach the ears of the different stakeholders in this field. And I'm also excited that teachers have been able to share ideas and as well as bring out their voices on the issues that affect them and affect the schools. So in the same spirit, I would like to appreciate the panelists for sparing your time to be with us during this festive season. Today we had 4 panelists. First panelist being Mr. Rukundo Moses, who is the head teacher of St. Agnes Primary School in Chisugu. Thank you so much, Moses, for being with us. Our second panelist, second panelist being Goretti Biomire, who is a lecturer at MOOPS and director of the Disability Resource and Learning Center. Thank you, Goretti, for being with us. Our third panelist being Mr. Fred Ongom, who is a teacher at Kampala Community International School. Thank you so much, Fred, for being with us. And our fourth panelist being Mr. Peter Okware, who is the CEO and founder of Teachers in Need, that is TIN, and is also a head teacher. Thank you so much, panelists, for being with us. And also thank you so much to our viewers for watching us. See you again next time, same place on Civic Space TV. Thank you. Bye.